Welcome to Comic Book Issues. I'm your host, The Last Angry Geek. Now, what is Comic Book Issues? Well, it's my new show, and we're going to be looking at not just comic books, but also comic book-related movies, comic book-related novels, comic book-related video games, anything that the four-colored world has touched upon. You might be wondering who I am. Well, as I said, I'm The Last Angry Geek. I'm this website's comic book expert.
Linkara! Love that guy.
No, not him. I was actually here about 10 months before him writing articles, but since people who read comic books don't read articles, everyone saw his videos first and kind of decided he was the website's comic book expert. I'm fine with that, really. 10 months I was here before him, but no, he's the comic book expert. I'm fine. I'm not bitter at all. Jackass. Anyway, you might be wondering what else I've done. Well, along with Rob and Doug Walker, I wrote and performed the Lion King riff tracks.
The Lion King sucked. It wasn't funny.
Well, I'm sorry you feel that way. We did do another one. You see, The Lion King won a contest for the best eye riff, or at least the most popular one at the time, and Mike Nelson hired us to write and perform one for Batman Forever.
I don't own a copy of that movie.
Well, you can get it off of Netflix.
I don't belong to Netflix.
Well, you can digitally download it off of Amazon.com.
I don't have a computer.
Well, that's hardly my fault.
Are you calling me a loser?
No, I'm not calling you a loser, but your arguments don't bear weight under close scrutiny.
It's a
My producer.
Sorry, boss.
Anyway, this week's episode is going to deal with Wednesday Comics, which is DC Comics' fourth attempt at a weekly series. Now, their first attempt was 52, which followed a year without Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. It was a critical and popular success for DC, so it's no surprise that they followed it up. Second came Countdown, which was meant to be a lead into Final Crisis, but ended up being a huge flop, as many had a hard time following the story, which ended up having just about no impact on the actual Final Crisis series. The third weekly attempt was Trinity, which seemed to be the opposite of 52, a year-long weekly story that featured Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. Now, the creators of the regular story were the team that created the original Thunderbolts, Mark Bagley and Kurt Busiek. But again, this suffered from a confusing story involving an alternate reality and just ended up alienating many of the fans. And that brings us to Wednesday Comics. Now, this is a book that is telling multiple tales of different heroes by different creators from both the independent and mainstream comic book worlds. Each set of creators get their own page to tell a story in Wednesday Comics, and featuring such characters as Superman, done by John Arcudi and Lee Bermejo, Batman, by Brian Azzarello and Edward Riso, Wonder Woman, by Ben Caldwell, along with lesser heroes like the Green Lantern by Kurt Busiek and Joe Quinones, Hawkman by Kyle Baker, Supergirl by Jimmy Palmiotti and Amanda Conner, the team behind Power Girl, one of my favorite DC titles at the moment. And there's even some downright obscure characters like Kamandi by Dave Gibbons and Ryan Sook, Metamorpho by Neil Gaiman and Mike Allred, and Sergeant Rock by Adam Kubert and his father, the man who made Sergeant Rock famous, Joe Kubert. Now, Wednesday Comics might seem like a good deal. It's about $3.99. You're getting 15 stories on 16 pages. But keep in mind that an average comic book runs about 28 pages, not including ads. And let me give you a sense of the scale. I think that's where the real money went into, is it's a very large comic book. Here's how you buy it on the newsstand or at your local comic book shop. Here's a regular comic book, and you can see they're about the same size at the moment. Spider-Man, One More Day, Part 4. I'll save this for later. I'm out of toilet paper. Anyway, Wednesday Comics, you can see, will just folds not once, but twice. And you can see each one of the stories runs the length of a page. It's about the size of a regular newspaper, maybe not a Sunday edition, but, average paper folded over in half like that. Now, these are good stories by great creators, and I want to read them, but my big problem with Wednesday Comics, and the reason I'm going to have to give it a thumbs down, is that it's made out of newsprint. Newsprint is terrible! Newsprint rubs off on your fingers, the ink. Newsprint tears easily. And it's this, you can see how it's folded. Let me just zoom in on that. It's a very bulky comic book. If you're a collector like I am, not everything, but the good stuff, you can't throw this in a Mylar. It's not going to fit. If you put it in a pile and put a bunch of comics on it, it's going to get crushed, it's going to crease. And after 25 years of collecting comics, I gotta say, creasing is anathema to me. I can't crease my comics. I can't tell you the number of times I've put comics in a stack, pulled it up and seen that the back cover on one got bent over as I was putting it down and just cried my eyes out. Because I have nothing else, it's just the comics, people. It's the only thing that keeps me going. So it's a bulky comic and it's made out of newsprint, which is just a terrible, terrible paper to print on. They do a good job with the colors, I think. Most of the images you've seen so far are digitally cleaned up, but the colors are pretty good. I'll give them that. That having been said, it would have been better if it had been on a nice, white, smooth paper. Let me talk about the scale again for just a moment. Here's a comic book page. Just again, I won't show you any art, but this is just to give you a sense of scale. Comic book pencilers, artists, usually work on 11 by 17 paper. I'll hold that up to the unfolded. And you can see it's kind of the same size, so what I do like is that it preserves the scales that the artists normally work on. Normally the 11 by 17 is then inked and shrunk down for the 8.5 by 11 comic book. This preserves that scale. I like that. It's just the newsprint. The newsprint kills it for me. Now you might be saying to yourself, well, DC didn't have any other choices the first time anyone's done a newspaper-sized comic book. Not true. Let me take you back 10 years to Dark Horse Extra. Dark Horse Extra had such titles like Hellboy by Mike Mignola, Concrete by Paul Chadwick, Monkey Man and O'Brien by Arthur Adams, and Madman by Mike Allred. Now, as you can see, Dark Horse Extra, I'll get in real close, you can see it's printed on smooth white paper, and it only had one fold, and it's still that one fold kind of went across the opening story. And again, the creases, I hate creases in my comics. But I think this is a much better representation of how a newspaper comic book can be done than, say, what DC did with Wednesday Comics. It's about 1, 2, 3 stories, some ads, and then when you've unfolded it, there was usually a poster for one of their comics. This one's Star Wars manga, and then a catalog of the month, of that month's releases. 25 cents. My comic book store gave them away for free. They did this for about 1.5 years. Wednesday Comics is running for 12 weeks. I don't know if they're going to be doing another series after the initial 12-week run. Wednesday Comics, I want to read those stories. I am going to read those stories, but I'm going to wait for a trade paperback. Hopefully they release it in a way that preserves the scale. If not, I'll still get it because I still want to read these stories. These are some amazing artists and writers. It's just the newsprint. I'm not going to pay $3.99 for a newsprint comic book for 12 weeks in a row. Sorry, money's too tight and my patience is too limited for newsprint. Thanks for joining us. This has been the first episode of Comic Book Issues. I'm excited. Still angry, though. The Last Angry Geek. Thanks for joining me. I'm the Last Angry Geek. And I don't have a catchphrase because my boss said my catchphrase too sounded too much like his. It was an homage. I'm not bitter. I am angry, but just by nature. So I'll leave you with a picture of my boss and some theme music that he really loves. Thanks for joining me. See you next time.